This is a moment in Jewish history. I'm your host, Ben Bresky, and today we're going to talk about shofars. And with us is Nili Salem. And Nili, I have seen you out and about with your giant shofar, and you have just released this past week a book called Awesome Blast, 40 Days of Shofar Intentions, Soul Healing and Spiritual Return. So maybe you can briefly talk about what is the shofar and its significance for the Jewish people, and then we can talk about how you got into this and ended up releasing this book.
Sure, would love to. Thanks for having me, Ben. So you asked me earlier the story of the shofar in Jewish history. And although this is a big spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you about the first and last chapter of the book. And that is that the shofar is actually one of the very first things in Jewish history. And it's also one of the last things in Jewish history. So you might ask, but why, Nili? I thought we only see the shofar in the Bible for the first time at Akedat Yitzchak, when Avram goes to sacrifice Isaac and then the ram is caught in the thicket. That horn, they say they're going to use that horn for the Messianic era. Well, okay, so I guess I already explained the end. And by the way, they have a horn in the synagogue, in the 4 old Sephardi synagogues in the Old City. They have it resting on a shelf, and they say they believe that that is the shofar from Akedat Yitzchak that will be used to sound for Mashiach. But how could it be the first? Avram's not the first. Adam and Eve are the first. Well, there is a Kabbalistic tradition that when God created Adam and Eve, because they were one body, when he blew the first breath of life into the physical body, that a sound came out. And that sound was the sound of the shofar. The truth is that we were the first shofar. And so perhaps it's even genetically in us. So it starts with the shofar, and then we have Akedat Yitzchak, and then we have stories all throughout the Tanakh about how the shofar was sounded for war, for gathering, for Rosh Chodesh, for celebration. And now we know traditionally it's been with us all these years for the high holidays, for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom Kippur. And again, we're praying for it 3 times a day in our Amidah. We talk about the shofar, even though most people don't realize that. And then, as we know, the great call for the great coming of the great era will sound with the shofar. And by the way, I missed a huge one, which is Mount Sinai. So the shofar has really been with us from the beginning till the end, and I just want to give it an extra, I'm trying to bring it back into style before it comes back in its big way, let us be the first to trend shofarage before the whole world hears it.
And this shofar that I see you walking around with, which is featured on the cover and in the photos, where is this specific shofar from?
So it is from a very special vendor in Jerusalem. And I actually have a deal with him not to reveal his name so he won't get overloaded, but I am taking order forms in case other people want such a shofar. And it's a very, very special, holy Jewish man who sells very, very special shofars. They're kosher and certified. And I have spent countless hours in his store testing out the multiple different shofars to make sure that I approve of the tone and the sound, because actually, I don't know if you've ever tried to blow a shofar, but not all of them have the most epic sounds. So you really want to make sure you get the right one that feels right and sounds right. By the way, just so you know, as a vegetarian, you don't have to kill the animal before you remove the shofar. So these are vegetarian-friendly shofars.
What kind of animals can be used to create a shofar horn?
Great question. You can read all about it in the book, but primarily they have to be able to be hollowed out, and there's all these different rules. You can't use a bovine shofar, so there's no cows, even though my middle name is Bess, no Bessie the cow, but specifically the one I have is actually from a kudu, Kudu, which is a certain type of, it's like an antelope, and it's from Yemen. And the reason that they choose these is because they are particularly long and beautiful. And we know we have this mitzvah to beautify your mitzvahs. And they meet the halachic standards. And also they allow for that deep, bassy tone. So that's why I chose to use a kudu, because it just looks really cool. Sounds really great.
And what are the 40 days?
Great question. So the 40 days are the days that are counted between Rosh Chodesh Elul and Yom Kippur. And 40 we know is a number that is used in Judaism frequently anytime you want to indicate rebirth, renewal, a change. some big transformation, right? We know 40 is used with Moses going on Har Sinai and 40 in the flood. And actually, there are 40 measurements of water in a mikveh. So 40 is the symbolic number for renewal, transformation, change. That's why we know about people going to the Kotel for 40 days, because it says that if Moshe could receive the Torah in 40 days, what can't be accomplished in 40 days?
How are you incorporating the 40 days with the blast of the shofar?
So the book is a high holiday preparatory companion guide. So what it does is there's an introduction that tells you all the interesting things and why I did it. But essentially, the format of the book is an essay a day, every day from Rosh Chodesh Elul. It even begins the last day of Av. And then it walks you through. So, sometimes what happens is the new year is coming and people want to make changes. They want to be self-reflective, but the end of the summer is so hectic that it just flies by, and before you know it, you're at Rosh Hashanah dinner. So this book is really supposed to be a handhold for everybody that just wants to spend, 5 minutes a day, maybe 10, getting mindful about the new year. And it walks you through every single day. Each day has an essay and also a QR code, so you can hear the shofar being blown every single day, even if you're not in a community where people blow shofar. Or perhaps if you don't go to Minyan, you have your own personalized shofar video for every single day. It takes you all the way through to Yom Kippur.
Are you personally blowing the shofar?
Of course I am.
For 40 times.
Yeah, well, I've spent the last 4 years traveling the world trying to get as many different shofar videos as possible. Because we also have to work with what's realistic. And we are bombarded with so many beautiful and amazing things on the internet that unless it's interesting, it's boring. So I thought, yeah, let me blow the shofar in Zion National Park and in Tel Aviv and in Arizona and Italy, as many places I can get to and bring the shofar, I do. Mexico, I've had problems trying to bring the shofar into Peru. They confiscated it and I had to get the government and Chabad involved just to get it back. It was like a whole big ordeal. So wherever I can take the shofar to keep it interesting, I do. And we'll see what adventures are to come still. I would love for people, by the way, to submit themselves blowing shofar in cool locations. I think I could make a really awesome series out of that. I just haven't got to it yet.
Dare I ask you if the shofar is sitting right next to you and you could pull it out and give us a sample?
I would absolutely love to, although the sound often doesn't translate over a computer. So let's see.
Okay, we pause as Nili goes to get the shofar.
They can't see it, but it's covered. This one, I've got it all wrapped in glitter. All right, let's see if you can hear it.
It's not coming out.
It doesn't.
Maybe because you're not standing close enough to the speaker.
No, it's a weird glitch that happens with the shofar. It doesn't record over Zoom.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Now, one of the things about your book, which is interesting, is you talk about having fun. And you have been to a lot of interesting locations as a teacher of Jewish subjects. Maybe you could talk about one of these countries. You mentioned Peru, but where else have you been recently?
Wow.
And why?
Okay. First, can I hark back to your comment on fun?
Yeah.
So my interest in fun is not subtle. It's very bolet, as they say in Hebrew, stand out, and very important to me because the concept of the shofar sounding for Mashiach indicates a time where we're all not only physically, but spiritually and emotionally well. And, there's this idea of Mashiach now, but what about Mashiach vibes in every now? Meaning if we're really, really working towards a time period where there's great bliss and joy in the world, then the way to get there is through bringing it now. So I think that, fun and joy are actually really imperative parts of our spiritual practice. And that's supposed to be the double language of the title, right? It's called Awesome Blast because it refers to the days of awe, but also because I want people to use this format of doing tshuva to make their lives into an awesome blast so that life is really a blast. So that fun part, I'm glad you caught that because that's actually a really real part of the healing. I really believe healing work comes with joy. And countries that I've been to recently with the shofar in particular,
I know you've been to a lot of countries, maybe something that stands out.
The three things that stand out for me, one of my top favorite is when I went to India on Shlichut to go lead seder. And I think we spoke about this in your Passover episode, how they actually the Bene Efraim, they're called, actually slaughtered a ram for the Pesach service. And they actually collected the blood, and then we went hut to hut putting blood on the doorposts. So that was a tremendous favorite of mine.
Even though you're a vegetarian.
Yeah, that part was really hard, watching the animal get slaughtered, but I wasn't exactly gonna get paint and like go PETA on them, like throw the paint on their ram. Also, they're so not financially well that they licked up every little molecule of that lamb just to feed the community. So I'm a vegetarian, but I'm no judgment of anyone else. And I also would never judge a poor community with no food for feeding themselves off of animals. So India and the ram slaughter was a fascinating one. Another one that I loved was going to Zimbabwe and driving 14 hours into the bush, like the African rural area, and then watching 200 people come out of nowhere also to have a seder. I mean, we made charoset together with like a mortar and a pestle, and like it was just unbelievable, And that tribe, for example, is called the Lemba tribe. They're 150,000 wide. That's spread across Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Mozambique. And 50% of the people that were genetically tested have the Cohen gene. Part of the shofar is the call for the ingathering of the exiles. And that's why I find it so fascinating that my life has really taken me to all these countries to work with the ingathering of the exiles. And here I am with this, appendage, this extra arm called the shofar. And it's just kind of mind-boggling, as I didn't plan any of this. The shlichut was one thing, the shofar was another thing, and it turns out it's all going for the same goals. And perhaps the third most special adventure, well, there's so many, but arriving in an Indonesian island, on the island of Papua, in a small town called Bongo. And all these tribes people came out to meet me, and they put a lei on me, some lei made of some ethnic fruit, and they started singing to me in Indonesian words that I don't understand, but I did understand the part that said, "Da-na-na-na Yahudi, di-da-da-da-da-di-la-la-la Yahudi." And all of them were singing and dancing in circles because a Jewish person from Israel had come to visit. And they were just so delighted. They had so much reverence and respect. They couldn't believe that someone from their long-lost family would travel all the way to be with them. And it's just really precious, We're so accustomed to being Jewish and having Jews from, around the world be in one spot. But then when you go out to the world and you see how sacred they hold our tradition, these people in Indonesia gather 12 people around one siddur, and they can read it backwards and forwards, and the children have it memorized, and they say every single word because it means so much to them. And perhaps what we've lost, they've gained. We thought we lost the tribes, but really we lost our own passion, and they have refound it. And please God, they're going to come back and reteach us how to connect in a way that reminds us how precious our tradition is.
And what are you doing when you're not writing books and playing shofar?
I take therapy clients. I have a private practice in spiritual psychotherapy, and I like to go swimming in the ocean. I try to go swimming every day in the ocean in Yafo to keep my body fit, and it's also really beautiful mental health tool because I get to stare at turquoise for, a good 40 minutes every day. It's really big privilege.
Nili Salem, do you have any other words you want to say about the shofar or anything?
I think that we should get Ben Bresky to play the shofar on somewhere in the world, or at least on his podcast. That's what is the last thing I want to say. I want to hear Ben Bresky playing shofar.
Okay.
Deal?
Nili, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, this has been A Moment in Jewish History. I'm your host, Ben Bresky. For more information on Nili Salem, your website is...
There's two right now. So the spiritual psychotherapy one is Nili B. Simcha, NILIBSIMCHA.com. And the book has its own new website, and that's awesomeblastbook.com.
Okay, Nili Salem, thank you for coming on Jewish History Moment. And thank you to all the listeners, and Shalom.